We don't have time.
We don't have time to do a Kanye episode.
We don't have time to do a Kanye episode, but tune in next time, I guess, for that shit.
Right.
All right. Yo.
Hey.
Off color fam. Oh, no, James, I'm doing it again. I'm sorry.
We're gonna try to get a whole morning zoo sound going on. I'll get a soundboard with air horns and shit.
Awooga! I'm sorry.
That's not an air horn. That's a 1920s car horn. I'm talking about.
But I like awooga. That's the one I like.
Try to replace that.
Yeah, awooga.
That's the new rap drop. Another one. Awooga.
We're gonna get together. Don't you worry.
Are we recording? Oh.
Are we recording? Okay.
Who's producing this?
All right, White James is producing, and I'm Rebekah Esther Henderson, a.k.a. the Tan Tigress. Now, I want to let our beautiful off-color fam know that this episode, we're going to have a little prequel going on here, and then we are going to play one of our original episodes that we did with Dr. Diggs. That
actually the very, very first episode we ever recorded together.
Yeah, it was the first episode, and we didn't release it because at the time we thought, oh, it's not like quite good enough, and we weren't totally ready to release it, even though like we thought it was good. I think we thought it was good.
In hindsight, it's great. I don't know what we didn't like about it.
I feel like it was you being like a white perfectionist.
Yeah, that's possible.
I'm serious, because I remember being like, this is dope, and I like sent it to people, and they liked it. Oh, but I remember my friend Dave. Hi, Dave. He was like, why are you looking stuff up on the internet like on your show? You should have already had that ready to go.
That sounds like maybe someone who's used to real media and not podcasts, because that's pretty standard in podcasts.
I was like, because I didn't know where something was. I was like, where's Iowa or whatever?
Right. I think in hindsight, we probably maybe felt, or I maybe probably felt like it was a lot of personal talk between me, you, and Greg.
Yeah.
Which at that time, I think we had this idea that it would be more topical and whatever. But in hindsight, that is really the soul of what the show was and really became. So yeah. I think it fits in perfectly.
It does.
With everything.
And I think that with one of the things that, James and I have been talking about when we missed Dr. Diggs, because we always miss him, is just that we had such a depth in those conversations.
It's true.
So if you're new to Off Color and you're kind of like, what's happening here? You can go back and listen to like our first 10 episodes, which had Dr. Diggs. And even though it's so sad and I don't want to like start crying or anything, but like I feel like thinking about that his last episode was the Black Panther one.
Yeah.
At least, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like so glad that he went out on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad he was there. I'm glad last time I got to hang out with him was going to see the movie and getting some drinks and talking about it, and then that he got to be on that episode, which he loved. He was very proud of that conversation and loved the way that it went. And I would love to have heard his takes on Sorry to Bother You and
oh my God,
Black Klansman and all the movies we've talked about since. But he loved Black Panther, especially because he was kind of a nerd.
He was
liked
he was a big old nerd.
He
was a big old nerd. So
But anyway, so you will get to hear about an hour of us talking with Dr. Diggs, and it's a fun episode to hear because we talk a little meta about like, oh, what are we going to do on this show? What's it going to sound like? How's it going to go? And so some of that is in there, and you'll hear right from the gate, Rebekah brings up a topic, and from minute one, Greg is in professorial mode, and he's got thoughts and he's got ideas, and he's into it. Yeah.
So that's good. So, and it's a Halloween episode. We recorded it right around Halloween.
It was October 27th.
Okay.
October 27th of last year, just shy of a year ago, and we thought instead of recording a new Halloween episode, why don't we just give you guys that one?
Yeah. But before we let you listen to that, we're going to talk about something that's even scarier, which is your ballot in Colorado. Whew. All right. So real quick, we are going to talk about some Colorado-specific voting issues, amendment issues. So if you do not live in Colorado and you do not want to listen to this, just go ahead and skip ahead.
Yeah.
Okay? And get to the rest of it. But right now... although it's going to be highly entertaining. So, no, you know what? Shut up. Just keep listening. You should be educated about things that are happening outside of your own sphere.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You got me? You feel me? White James?
I feel you.
All right. Just checking. All right.
I mean, that's what we did before we moved here. We were very interested in local Colorado politics. When I was in New York, that's all I wanted to do was read 18 amendments to the Colorado Constitution.
All right, it's not 18, but it is a lot. Damn.
It is a lot.
All right, and you may have seen, I did produce a little video on the one I'm feeling really strongly about, I'm just going to jump on that one first, is Amendment A. Mm-hmm. Amendment A prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude in all circumstances. And it removes this language from the Colorado Constitution.
So something a lot of people don't know is that our federal Constitution, the amendment to repeal slavery, repeals slavery except as part of punishment for a crime of which you are duly found guilty. I don't remember the wording.
Yeah, but
and the Colorado Constitution basically borrows that wording verbatim and keeps it, which opens the door to all kinds of inequitable prison labor. As you may or may not know, our prisons are full of people working for like pennies a day, working really hard, answering your phone calls on call centers. You know, it's not just stamping license plates and cleaning up sides of roads, although they still do that stuff too. And so this would make Colorado the first state to formally say, no, you can't enslave anybody, whether they've committed a crime or not. Yeah. You're not allowed to do it. This was sort of a topic recently because Kanye recently, very poorly worded, tried to put that idea across in a tweet, but instead phrased it as if he wanted to repeal the entire repeal of slavery. But basically, that was the topic he was trying to bring up.
Yeah, and so oh, Kanye. I know we said we wouldn't, but oh man, poor Kanye. But yeah, okay. So anyway, so if you're in Colorado and then you should vote yes on Amendment A I just feel like, come on now.
Right.
Really? And so,
right.
But then part of the argument for that, and I know I don't want to get like too deep into it, but they're like, oh, well, people should still like have to pay their debt to society. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but we don't need to enslave them.
Right. We should also be clear that I'm sure there are people who say that, but this is not actually a controversial issue. Mm-hmm. The entire state legislature on a bipartisan level supports this legislation.
Yeah,
there is no Democrat or Republican in the entire state who thinks it shouldn't pass. So whoever tells you that it shouldn't pass is a radical right-winger, basically.
Okay. Yeah, word. No, and that's the thing is like it only didn't pass by like less than 1% in 2016.
Mm-hmm, because
people were confused. And that's why we're going to do this right now. So this is like the off-color guide to voting. You don't have to take our Rebekahmendations, but you should.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So we're going to start real quick. Okay, so Amendment V, letter V as in...
Wow, okay.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Lower...
She still can't think of one other than...
It's okay, I got it. All right.
V for vino, for vermouth. I'm not implying anything here. But.
Listen, not everyone can just drink their coffee without putting some Kahlua in it, okay? Or whatever. You're distracting me, James.
Okay, I'm sorry. Amendment V.
Amendment V. V is for vendetta. How's that? Huh?
Okay.
Huh? Okay. All right. So that one lowers the age requirement for members of the state legislature from 25 to 21, and I'm going with a yes on that.
Yeah,
because that seems stupid to me. Okay, yeah, their brains aren't like fully formed, but I just feel like, who cares?
Well, first of all, if we're actually going on the science of that, they've figured out that your brain's not fully formed until like your 40s now. And even if it is, it might never be actually done growing. So all that stuff is out the window.
Oh, word.
I do child development stuff kind of all day now. So
yeah. So now you know.
Me,
shit. Well, I'm like giving misinformation to people.
No. It's true. That's a common thing that people think because there were some studies, but now they've found that they've pushed that date back. And there's a lot of people who are basically saying the more we learn about the brain, the more we're learning that you never stop growing. There's never a day when you're like ready. So yeah, I don't have any problem with 21-year-olds on the state legislature.
Me neither, especially if they're like good. Like, so an example I would give would be like Tay Anderson, right? He's young. He's like 18, 19. I think he's only 9, right?
He's like a year out of high school, right?
Yeah. And so he's like somebody that I feel like at 21 would be a totally like appropriate member of the legislature.
Sure.
That's all, so.
We also need to get over this gerontocracy thing. We need to get over this idea that the only people who can run the country are 80-year-old men.
Because they're clearly fucking it up.
Obviously.
So
and I'm not saying anything to Bernie fans. I'm just saying.
Oh, I think you're saying something. No more. That's a quote from someone I can't say because he'll get mad at me. It's related to me, but he's like, no more old white motherfuckers. That's it. We're just done with that.
Yep.
Okay. That's real talk though. Mm-hmm. Next. Okay. Amendment W. This one is for election ballot format for judicial retention elections. You're probably like, what? Basically, it makes the ballot more simple to look at. So I'm going to go with a yes on Amendment W.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say it's kind of a soft yes. If you have some disagreement, tweet at us or something. But as far as we can see, the only person who doesn't like the amendment is the person who wrote Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that's kind of destroying the state. So I don't really know what the argument against it is. But if you know, let us know.
Yeah. Ooh. You really.
Right?
Yeah.
Interactive.
Word.
This is called production.
I like it. All right. Amendment X is industrial hemp definition. So this one I was confused on, but White James has told me that I should vote yes on it.
I feel like it's a yes just because I don't know a ton about it and I don't really give that much of a shit about all this weed legislation and stuff. All I know is there are already federal and state guidelines for what is considered marijuana versus industrial hemp or whatever. I don't see why it has to be written in stone in the Constitution. So if you vote yes on that, you get rid of that, and then we can be dynamic and change laws as time goes on instead of just having this Constitution full of stuff that we can't repeal. That's my feeling on it.
Sounds good to me.
Again, let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if you're deep in that
out.
industry and you know something that we don't know.
Word.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Amendment Y is for congressional redistricting. And we looked this over before we started talking to you. And so we're giving that one a yes, even though we're not totally sure that it's going as far as it needs to. And there may be problems with it because it's like a committee that there's a lot. You should probably Google it.
I'm going to be fully honest. I'm really confused about, as far as I can tell, the difference between Y and Z is that Y banishes anyone who's a professional politician from the redistricting committee, which is cool.
Yeah.
But then I'm seeing a lot of people saying they want both to pass. And so I don't even know how they would interact with one another. We're pretty confused on this one.
Yeah. So so Y and Z, we're going to have to defer to people who are more knowledgeable, and we'll also get more information, but at least now you know that you should be thinking about it.
I'm leaning yes. I'm down to make Colorado a fully blue state. Personally.
Word. I want to make it like green. I don't know. Sorry. Okay, keep going. A, we covered. Abolish slavery. Vote yes on that. Don't be as silly.
Yeah.
All right. Amendment 73, funding for public schools. I'm a yes on that.
Yeah, I'm a yes on that too.
So, because I know that like all the teachers and stuff like that are supportive of it. And so I'm going to defer to them as I usually do. And that's another thing. If you don't know what to do with your ballot, ask someone who you like respect, who you think is like knowledgeable.
Yep.
Okay. And that's one way to like kind of fill out your ballot.
And also look at like rankings of states. We know that Colorado is near the basement in like all of our quality of education, and we also pay almost nothing in property taxes. I know all the Colorado natives are whining and complaining that everything's getting too expensive, but you got people in this state in really, really wealthy districts paying like 1% tax.
Okay.
Look at states where the schools are good, they are not paying 1%
well,
tax. That's reality.
Word. I mean, our property taxes, I grew up in Westchester County. That shit's like through the roof.
Yep.
But you know what? My parents never, ever complained about it because of the education that me and my brother and sister got. I'm just saying.
Nope.
Like, that was something that
My father's a public servant, getting paid very well. He's got a good healthcare plan, all that. And I see people doing his same job here in Colorado making like $13 an hour. It's insane.
Yeah. All right. Word. All right. Next. So then, speaking of money, Amendment 75... I skipped one. I skipped Amendment 74. Oh, nah, I got to give that one a no.
Oh, yeah.
Amendment 74 is compensation for a reduction in fair market value by government law or regulation. That's like if your house, like if something happens or your property, then you can get reimbursed by the government for any like devaluing in your property.
Right.
And that sounds like good if you're like, oh, I live in my house over here in Diggsville, formerly known as Stapleton. And if they build something here and then my market value goes down, I'll get more money. That's not what's going to happen.
Right.
It's
basically like a partner. This one has sort of like a cousin on the ballot, which is Proposition 112, which is the proposition to force oil and gas companies to drill farther away from homes and schools. If that passes and 74 passes, then that means that whatever business the oil and gas companies lose, they can basically make you pay for by making the government pay for it by saying, well, if you're not going to let us drill here in your backyard, then you've reduced the value of our mineral rights or whatever. So it's just another one of those things that they make it sound like it's to benefit you and me, but really it's going to go to oil and gas companies.
All right, word.
So yes on 112, no on 74.
Okay. Then Amendment 75 is about campaign contributions. This one, it doesn't go far enough. We need hell of campaign finance reform because it is like gross, like what it takes to run a campaign. And I'm learning that as I'm doing my documentary, Running with My Girls. Support that, Indiegogo. You can give me some money. I still have a campaign going on that. What? All right. But I got distracted by my own promotion. Anyway, I'm going to vote yes on it, even though I have some hesitation in it because I feel like it doesn't really address the real problem.
Yeah, I'm undecided so far because basically to describe what it does is if there's someone in the race who has a ton of money and can spend a ton of money, then everybody else in the race, they can increase their maximum contribution they're allowed to take so that they can get closer to closing that gap, which that sounds good. I would rather see us getting less money in the race, tell those rich people, sorry, you're capped, you can't spend that much money. I think that's better than then telling everybody else to collect more money.
Me too.
So I'm a little on the fence on it. I'm going to decide, do a little more research when I fill out my ballot. But
Okay.
I would lean toward a yes because reform is clearly necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just not enough. That's the thing. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's never enough. All right. Okay. Proposition 109 is authorized bonds for highway projects. And okay, now even as I'm looking at this, we literally just discussed this, but now I'm like, oh, highway projects.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, I like bonds because I feel like, so full disclosure, I am a public servant. Nothing I say reflects my employer. But that's how we got like some pretty dope libraries in Colorado came from the bonds.
Right.
And so I kind of feel like it's probably okay.
I'm again on the fence. I'm like, again, I would like to see property taxes go up. I'm a homeowner, so like, and Rebekah is as well. So for us to say property taxes should go up is not just like blowing smoke. Like, I would like to see people in the state pay for the services that they want in the state rather than just get a bunch of bonds to put up the debt. But knowing how red most of the state is and what contingencies look like, maybe that's the only way to get the money. So I'm again a little on the fence on that, but leaning yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
110, authorized sales tax and bonds for transportation projects. This one I'm a definite yes on, only because I recently heard an interview about it, so I feel somewhat knowledgeable. And it's like nothing. It's like 6 cents or something, and it raises like so much money. And I'm not opposed to paying taxes especially for things like my roads and public transportation and stuff like that. I don't mind paying for stuff like that. The shit I'm not trying to pay for is murdering Black and brown people all over the world.
Right. I would again say I haven't really read on that, so I'm undecided on that. But my only thing that I would lean no on is sales tax tend to be a regressive tax because sales tax hits poorer people more proportionally. Again, I would like to see people like me and Rebekah who can afford to pay a little more property tax paying for this stuff than to pass it on to, an apartment renter who has to pay more sales tax for their kids' school clothes or whatever. But again, I'm saying that going in totally blind. I really haven't read that proposition. I don't know.
Word. Okay. So next, 111, limitation on payday loans. I don't think we even need to discuss that. Obviously, you should vote yes on that unless you're just a piece of trash that likes payday loans because they're so predatory.
Yeah.
They completely are set up to just like keep our slavery system in place and keep people down. So I'm going to have to say.
It's like polite loan sharking. It should be completely illegal. I don't understand why the payday loan system is even permissible in our society. So anything that undermines that system, I'm voting yes.
So yes on Prop 111. And then Proposition 112, which is increased setback requirement for oil and natural gas development. So this one I feel like is confusing to a lot of people. And I've had people ask me about it.
Okay.
So they're like, because the way they word it, you're like, do I vote yes or do I vote no on it? Like, it just feels, it's like, I don't know. It feels really weird and hard to understand. And I feel like I'm highly educated. And I'm like, I don't know. But this one, I'm sorry. I don't want people fracking like at all. Okay. I'm not into that. I want to like power all our shit by like wind and water and air and sun, if that's possible.
Yep.
Okay. I know there's people out there working on that. Good job. So I'm going to say I want to vote yes on 112 because it just sets from residential areas where people are like living and stuff. It sets them back, right?
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
they can drill and frack and stuff, okay?
I would agree with that.
All right. So,
why don't we recap it? Why don't we do a rundown of all those? Because that was probably hard for people to keep track of. Why don't
I know, unless they had a pen and paper. All right, so here we go. Amendment V, lower age requirement for members of the state legislature.
Yes.
Yes. Amendment W, election ballot format for retention elections. Yes.
Yeah.
Amendment X, industrial hemp definition. Yes. Amendment Y, congressional redistricting. James is undecided. I'm a yes. Amendment Z, legislative redistricting. Uh-oh. I'm drunk. Yes. Amendment A, slavery, abolish slavery.
Yes.
Yes, a hard yes. Amendment 373, funding for public schools. Yes. Okay. Amendment 74, no. N-O. Okay. Amendment 75, yes, but I'm dubious. Proposition 109, I'm a yes. James is undecided. Proposition 110, I'm a yes. James is also undecided because he's kind of more
because I haven't done any of this research yet.
111, yes, a hard yes for payday loan, limitations on payday loans, and Proposition 112, we are both a hard yes on increased setback requirement for oil and natural gas development. And then we missed one, which is recommendations on retention of judges.
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing where you see like what the... it's not the bar, but whatever the organization is that rates judges. Yeah. The problem is that that's pretty useless because it's such a it's such a quid pro quo professional organization. They almost never don't support retaining a judge. So you just read a whole bunch of stuff that says yes. So that's tricky. I find that hard unless you've had personal experience with the judge or they've messed with somebody who you know.
Like Elizabeth Epps.
Yep. Or they're in your neighborhood or something. Then it's pretty hard to really make a recommendation.
So we say no.
On all of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what we heard was what you're supposed to do. Someone told me that. That's what my husband always does too, is then he just vote because they should just change. We have to keep it moving. So he's always like, nope. He's like, get him out.
I usually do some quick Googling.
That's what I do too.
And if I see the name associated with a lot of putting people in jail for a long fucking time, then I'll vote a no.
Okay.
But the truth is I do find it very hard to research and vote on that. That's interesting, the idea of voting no. So if you vote no on everybody, do they just lose their job or do they go up again for reconsideration? I don't even know.
Let's table that one because I don't know either.
Wah, wah, wah.
Oh, God.
We the best. All
right. So that's it. That's your voting guide. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, this kind of helps us to segue a little bit into a conversation that White James and I had before we got on mic about voting in general.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is something, and I think it's come up on our show several times. A lot. And we've had guests who've been on the show in the past, like Hasira Ashimu, aka H Soul, and Elizabeth Epps, and Hashim Coates. I feel like are three of our most vocal political people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Just trying to look back on that. And Hashim is vote no matter what. Vote.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then H Soul, sometimes I don't know if he votes or not.
He, from a private Facebook conversation, not private, but on his Facebook wall that I witnessed it, looks to me like he does vote, but that he is that he has a lot of sympathy for kind of the non-voter movement.
Right.
And if I'm wrong about that, Soul should correct us, but that was my understanding.
Okay. So because I saw the same post, and I think that's what sparked this he was like, no vote, people who aren't voting, we shouldn't shame them for not voting.
Right.
And I can't help but think about when we had the great singer Danette Hollowell on our show. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know Danette Hollowell, you need to just go ahead and Google that and listen to that because you're going to feel very good.
Yep.
We can play some later.
Oh.
Is that legal? I don't know. All right.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Technically, I think we're supposed to pay the publishing, but if Google can't pick out the audio, then they won't know we're violating anything. That's my understanding. Once again, if I'm wrong on this, everything I say,
it's so authoritative because I think it's because you're white, dude. I'm like, oh, he knows.
Everything I say has no actual research behind it, except that thing I said about kids' brains. That I actually knew about. But anything else that I say, no matter how confident I sound, if you think you know anything about it, assume you can correct me because I probably have no idea what I'm talking about.
Okay, word.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I forgot what I was saying.
We were talking about voting because we were saying, should we get into candidates? And then we were like, we're basically voting straight Democrat because this is a purple state and we're trying to keep it blue.
Yeah, we're keeping it blue. And then the only other thing I would like to do is give a shout out to Chantel Lewis, who was on the show last episode. She's running for RTD in District B. District B is like a gigantic district. I don't even know all the neighborhoods, but I know it's like Green Valley Ranch, Stapleton,
Park Hill. East Colfax, where I used to live.
Yeah, so it's like a big one. So just look it up. But Chantel is the bomb, and she also has bars, and you can hear her rapping.
Yeah, if you want to hear her rap, barred up on the last episode,
just go ahead and listen to that. Okay.
But do we want to talk about the voting, non-voting controversy?
I do, because I have a hard time with it. And I feel like me and Elizabeth Epps kind of got into it. And she's very adamant. She votes in every election. She leaves boxes blank for people. And I feel like that seems okay. But at the same time, I just like they're sending like what I would consider a somewhat dangerous and apathetic message to people who are not going to vote.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, I don't want to put words in Elizabeth's mouth, but we've talked about it and I've seen her post about it a lot online. Something that she said that I think is absolutely true is she says, if you live in the Bay Area in California, which is like the least valuable vote in all of America, you're voting when the polls have closed across the whole rest of the country, you're in the safest district ever, your vote is essentially meaningless. If you're voting in that and you think that you're a better, more active person than some on-the-ground activist who's working year-round and isn't voting, then that's ridiculous. I agree with that. My only question would be, why doesn't the on-the-ground activist vote also? I guess it doesn't seem to me like an either-or.
I also find it baffling. So when people say, I'm not going to vote because my vote, but I also feel like people are like, there's no meaning in it. And I feel like I understand that more maybe during like national elections, but for me, these local elections are so important because they just impact our daily lives. And so I just don't like it that people don't know, don't care, and have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, just to give one example, our preferred candidate for Attorney General was Joe Salazar.
Right.
He lost his primary by something insane. Wasn't it less than 100 votes or something like that? That number might be wrong. It was certainly a negligible number that could have been made up by non-voters. And so I just really struggle I agree that there's no point shaming people who aren't voting because most people aren't voting and there's got to be a reason for it. And for us to just be saying that, they're just stupid or unengaged or something is wrong. But I have yet to actually hear a good argument for not doing it.
So that was why I brought up Danette though, was because when she was on the show, she told that story.
Yeah, which was moving.
And it was really moving. And it was just the way that the person did shame her at her door in her house, didn't know what was going on in her life, and I could see how that could be a real big turnoff.
Absolutely.
And I feel like she's justified in that. Right. And I think when you have certain like specific principles, because on our Thanksgiving episode, our first episode that we released last year, which was called Black Thanksgiving. No, it was like Black Thanksgiving and Weaponizing White Privilege or something, something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that.
It's the first episode.
It's the first one.
Episode
so you gotta listen to that. But
what were we talking about?
I don't know.
You were saying Danette. You go back and you listen to that episode.
Whoa, white privilege. I don't know.
I actually don't remember.
I don't either.
I know we talked a lot about Trump.
That people. I remember. Okay, you can cut that whole thing.
No, I'm not cutting it.
Like, I gotta study. No, it's because Maria Nagawa, who was on our Black Panther episode, and she was on episode with Tamara Banks, like she's married to this like white dude who's a citizen from Fort Collins or one of those places around here. And she had listened to that episode before she came over for dinner. I had invited her over for dinner. It was like when we first started to be friends. She called me and she was like, I don't know if we can come to dinner because I need you to know that my husband voted third party and you like uninvited people to your house and you talked about how mad you are that this guy voted third party.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not talking about you.
Right.
But The reason that he voted third party is because Maria is a Ugandan woman, an African woman, and the way she feels about Hillary Clinton and the United States and what we have done to her country, many countries in Africa, that Andrew, her husband, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, her husband couldn't, in good conscience, he could not vote for Hillary Clinton having her as his wife. And so to me, that's like a legit reason versus like the guy that I was talking about that we uninvited for Thanksgiving dinner who was just like, Hillary's trash and she's just as bad as Donald Trump. Like just like really like what I felt like was like a really uninformed vote.
I think that also goes to your point, which is like, okay, if you don't want to vote for the president, that can be understandable because you really often are really forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. And there's only really a handful of districts in America where the vote even actually determines who wins. I sort of get that. Again, I felt strongly, even though I'm far to the left of Hillary Clinton, that I needed to vote for Hillary Clinton because I live in a purple state. I just really felt that way. But if Maria's husband is conscientiously and actively voting and participating in every other way, but he just couldn't bear to hold his nose and vote for Hillary Clinton, I get that. I would still maybe gently disagree with him and just be like, well, we got Saudis hacksawing reporters now, and the president just being like, oh, I'm cool with that. They buy my hotels. So the idea that the lesser of two evils wasn't a lot less evil is still something I am hung up on and struggle with. But I get that. I just think there's a lot of people who don't vote who then try to reverse engineer this thing of like why it's acceptable and how, well, voting's not the main way to do blah, blah, blah. But most people, like Hashim Coates said, you quoted him.
He was like, you telling me that you're ready to take some hot lead and get in the revolution,
right?
When you can't even like fill out a ballot,
right? What I would say is, if your thing is I'm dropping out of this society because it's bullshit and I'm not participating in the vote, cool. But if you're out there working 40 hours a week, paying your income tax, paying rent or a mortgage, you're doing everything that needs to be done to stay in the lines, and the only revolutionary act you are perpetrating is not voting, I assure you that the power structure has no problem with that protest. They are happy to have you not voting. So I just don't really buy that. I just think it's what we're trying to put across, because I think we're going to have some friends mad at us. What we're trying to put across is we get why a lot of people don't vote. We understand it. We're not saying, oh, you're an idiot or you're apathetic or everything that's bad in the world is your fault or whatever, because people do say stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're just saying, respectfully, we have yet to actually hear a compelling argument for not casting a vote. We get why it happens.
Yeah.
But you still really should. I feel like that's kind of where we're landing.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing. And then for me, Colorado, I'm like, damn, it's so easy here. Okay?
It's in your mailbox.
It's like, and like for me, because I work at the library, I have a ballot box outside. So I can bring like all the ballots if you fill it out. And if you're too tired, just give it to me and I'll put it in the ballot box for you.
And if you hate politicians and you hate Democrats and you cannot pull a ballot for a Democrat, and I get it because Democrats are still bombing people all over the world. Democrats are still supporting an unjust prison and policing system. If you really can't do it, cool. But you still got a dozen amendments and propositions that directly affect how your state is governed. You don't have to hold your nose and vote for an individual, but that's stuff you should have a voice in. And I don't see how it benefits you or anybody else not to. That's my rock the vote opinion.
Go ahead. Well, I like Roy Wood Jr.'s one where he's like, he calls 911 because there's white girls taking selfies.
I don't know what that is.
I'm gonna tweet it. So he says, he's like, 911, there's these white girls taking selfies and they said they're not gonna vote. And I thought it was really great. I thought it was hella funny. All right, guys. So thanks for checking out our voting guide, the off-color guide to voting, because we did say we were gonna do that. And this is it.
We're thinking about going forward, maybe doing this format a little more, maybe having Rebekah and me do kind of an intro, just kind of breaking down some current event stuff, so that then when we get to the guest segment, we can really focus on what the guest is promoting or talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be just topical about whatever happened in the news today, because a lot of times guests are not up to date on it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's something we're going to tool around with. You might hear some things a little different going forward. And
but for now, just check it out. Check out our old episodes if you want to. Share this. If you are a listener, please go ahead and share with like 5 of your friends or something, because we are trying to like get Off Color more out into the world.
The thing everybody says to do that we never tell you to do is, if you listen on iTunes, you can go on there, you can give us 5 stars. If you write a review, that's awesome, but you don't have to. You can just give us 5 stars. And that alone increases visibility. If someone listens to something, we tag it with keywords like race and racism. If somebody listens to another race podcast and we have a good rating, we might show up. So that's a way that you can benefit the show pretty easily.
Yeah, so thanks for your support, and make sure that you vote, bitches! Too much? That's something I've been thinking about, and then so I saw the other day on Facebook, it was the question of, it said, oh God, I think it was Good Housekeeping maybe, or Red Book or something. I don't know, one of those white lady magazines. And it said, if your kid is wearing a kind of racist costume, then you're wearing it too.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so obviously I clicked on that.
Whoa.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And it was all about Moana. And now, I have my son, and maybe you can hear him now.
It's ambiance. That's part of the ambiance.
And he loves Moana.
Okay.
He loves it, right? And the little girls love it, and it's been a very empowering situation. But I don't know. What do you think?
To me, it's not a big deal one way or the other. I mean, it gets into, what do we want people to do, and what do we think it means? And I'll go back a few years where, I don't know if I told you this story last time we talked. My daughter, when she was 10, wanted to play basketball. So she played on an all-boys team. And almost all the people on the team were white. And every single boy wanted to be Michael Jordan. And the way they played basketball was they were mimicking Michael Jordan. They would stick their tongue out. They would run and gun. Matter of fact, most of our games were called by halftime because they were so far ahead. And I thought that was a strange thing, because I never would have imagined when Michael Jordan was actually playing that a bunch of little white kids would all be, wanting to be like Mike, like literally. And here it happened. So how did I feel about that? I actually felt okay. Now, if I'm coming from a certain place, I could have had my hands folded and saying, be upset about all that cultural appropriation. Yeah. But, I'm like, well, how far have we come where, people at one time couldn't even play, and now, all the mainstream people are trying to be like the black person. So I do understand the cultural appropriation, and sometimes I don't like it. Like, I don't.
What do you think about Jeremy Lin's dreadlocks?
See, that doesn't bother me.
Someone asked me that the other day.
What about the Moana costume is supposed to be racist?
Yeah.
Is it the fact that she's a person of color, or is there something specific to the costume that's seen as
good?
It's that she's a person of color, and that she's Polynesian, and that they feel like wearing a Polynesian costume is appropriating the culture, or my culture's not a costume. Like that was one.
So there is that. There is that.
And I saw it today. It was in Teen Vogue or Teen Woke or whatever they're calling it, and they had an interview, like a video interview, where the people were talking about it, right? So one girl was like, I don't know, the guy was wearing a afro and a dashiki, And so then, and then the other one was, dressed up like a Rock the Casbah or something. See, even that, I feel like I shouldn't have said that. but so it was like a Middle Eastern girl, black girl, and a Polynesian, Hawaiian. And they were like, they were talking, they were like, well, this makes people think like, oh, they think you're dressed up like a terrorist, like this is my culture. And then the Hawaiian girl was crying. And she was talking because she said people don't even know about the erasure, of the Hawaiian culture, that they weren't even allowed to do it. And her grandmother was learning the hula and making her skirt for like the first time now at age 70. And she's like holding up like the little grass skirt from the dollar store or whatever. And she's like, and it doesn't look like this. And then she was crying. And then I felt kind of bad because I'm kind of with you where I'm like, I think it's okay for a little white girl to dress up like Moana as long as she's not doing some blackface stuff, like if they're painting their skin brown. And I think that's what happened last year is they made like a Maui costume and it was brown. And then so like... Well,
it had the tattoos too, which that is sort of a very specifically Polynesian thing, the tattoo style.
So those are the places where I would start drawing lines for myself.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about it, I don't think there's one right or wrong way. I think it always has to be negotiated with the people who are around, and we have to listen to and respect, their feelings in it, because not all people, even in the same group, feel the same. But it can be a problem. 2 years ago at my work, the cafeteria staff for Cinco de Mayo served tacos, but then they all were wearing what they felt was Mexican attire. And, people had feelings about that.
Sorry, I just what they felt like was Mexican attire. Like, what were they wearing?
Sombreros. Pretty much guess. I don't think anyone's going to come out of left field with something we weren't expecting.
And it was a thing because at my workplace we're supposed to be about respecting diversity. And so forth. And some people thought that was very disrespectful. Mm-hmm. Other people didn't.
But is there a big difference to you between dressing up as a person who happens to be a different race than you are versus dressing up as a race?
Wow.
It's because kids want to dress as Moana because Moana sings those songs and goes on that adventure. They don't want to dress up as a tiki god or whatever, like some Polynesian stereotype. So I don't know. I feel like that's a big...
I think it's a good question. And let me even flip the question. What does it mean if we tell people they can't?
Yeah. Well, and that was the question. That was what all the white moms were asking. They were like, well... What? My daughter can only be Elsa princess? Like, I think it's great that they're dressing up like Moana because it's like, it's that, my favorite from like the Seinfeld. Like, how is it racist if I like your race, right? But it's, I have my own feelings about it, right? Where I'm kind of like, it's Halloween, y'all. But then, honestly, watching that video today and watching that girl cry did make me feel a little bit like, ooh. But I don't really know because then the one thing that came up though was the girl with the dashiki, the African costume. Uh-huh. Now, I can remember in 5th grade putting on my dad's dashiki and a fez that my mom had got from Morocco on a trip. And that was my Halloween costume. Mm-hmm. And then the next year I was a geisha. And I was like...
A lot of aspects of you are coming together in this anecdote.
So I feel like, but it's like, yeah, we need to do better. Like, those are not... I was been a gypsy a million times or, those kind of things. So we do want to be better, but I don't know. And then the girl was talking about the Afro wigs, and, I wore an Afro wig last year for my Halloween costume. Because I was doing the Get Down. And so I was like a 70s. And also, the Afro wig looked bomb on me, okay? It looked great. I look fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I like natural hair. I think it looks wonderful. And so I didn't have any problem with me wearing that as like a hairstyle. Mm-hmm. But would I have a problem with James over here putting on an Afro wig and a dashiki?
For a 70s theme party? For Halloween?
Yeah. So what if I can't think of anyone off the top of my head who wore a dashiki who would be a good Halloween costume. But let's say I didn't wear a dashiki, but let's say I dressed up as I grew up watching A Different World. Let's say I wanted to dress up as Dwayne Wayne, and he would have like the fez, and he would wear like the leopard print like vest that matched the fez or whatever. I'm clearly dressed as a black guy.
Yeah.
But I'm dressed as a black guy,
Yeah.
not as black people.
Yeah.
Does that read different, or are you just begging for trouble when you walk in the room, or should you just leave it alone? Like,
So that's an interesting question too. So if it's me and you, then the question, it's the global question. So to answer your question, it just depends. You know, it just depends. And one of the things that happens for me is also depends on how I know you.
right.
You know, and if I know you and you know me like that, I know you like that, I'm not going to either, number one, I'm not going to have a problem with it.
Right.
Number two, I'm going to feel like I can talk to you about it. And neither one of those things would be, I wouldn't anticipate them being problematic. If somebody else did it, I might be like, what is that? Who does he think he is? And what does he think he's doing?
Right.
And so it's not even I think each situation, each context is different for me.
Yeah. But then it's, so I feel like this is where the question gets to where it's like very simple, where maybe, I don't know if you can help me with some academic stank. But when people are like, well, my friend's daughter is black. She dressed up as Katniss Everdeen, Hunger Games. Fictional character, but she's played by Jennifer Lawrence in the movie, right? Are we going to tell her, like, oh, no, you can't dress up as Katniss?
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to.
That's crazy talk, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
And so that's the reverse argument from the white parents when it comes to the Moana costume, right? They're like, well, then it's reverse racism.
No. But I think I fall more like
That's a whole different. I think there are a lot of counter arguments that wouldn't require you to believe in reverse racism, but that would certainly be an argument you would hear for sure.
Oh, it was all over.
Yeah.
Well, my new thinking,
as it tends to be.
My new thinking, just as part of this conversation, listening to James, is I think we just talked about are you representing the group or are you representing a person? And I'm going to extend that person thing to character, right? Mm-hmm. When you have Disney movies and the Disney movies are popular, one of the things that happens pretty naturally is kids want to dress up as that character. And so if they're dressing up as a character in a movie, I don't feel that that's a cultural appropriation.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I was thinking about with the Michael Jordan thing is, I mean, obviously, for as long as America has been a thing, or at least as long as mass media has been a thing, white people have glommed on to like blackness as being cool. Mm-hmm. So that's inextricable to some degree. But ultimately, people wanted to be like Michael Jordan because he was the greatest ever. Right. You know, that's why he was objectively the greatest ever. And so, like, maybe people argue about that now with LeBron or whatever, but nobody argued about it in 1993.
No.
And
I like this is a sports.
Yeah. This is also as much as I know about sports. I stopped watching basketball when the Knicks started sucking, so that's like 20 years ago.
Wow.
But I mean, stereotypical old argument between white people and black people was all white people insisted that Larry Bird was the greatest player of all time.
I remember.
And all black people insisted that Magic was.
Right.
And that became like a big thing. Jordan, even though I guess they're kind of contemporaries, but Jordan like played longer. Jordan represents the age of like, no, there's no question about this. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a 10-year-old white kid from Nebraska, I'm still going to stick out my tongue and try to dunk because Mike's the best.
Right.
And so to me, that's about Michael. That's not about a black guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
but do you think people know in general, I know it's hard to generalize, but like that there's a difference between being a character and,
I don't think we think about it. So I don't think people know. And also you have the other feature of, sometimes people are even trying to be friendly and be close, and they don't they don't know. Like my pet peeve is sometimes a new white person will try to talk to me like they're black. What's up, bro? Like, and using all kinds of sort of cliches that they think to kind of prove to me that they're down.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's sometimes, but even though it's annoying, I also know that people aren't really intentionally being offensive. Sometimes when people are trying, it's just annoying. And again, I mean trying like when they try to show off some sort of
black knowledge.
Manufactured,
vernacular.
Yes, all those things. All those things.
Wait, how would I Blackula? No.
No, that's a movie about a vampire.
Right.
Blackula, that's a good one. It is Halloween, okay?
Yeah, no, you're right. Very
so I
seasonal.
did have one question. I just wanted to get your guys' like hot take on this.
Okay.
Because I feel like we're talking about, this like what is the cultural appropriation, like what for Halloween and this and that, and the Afro wig particularly. Mm-hmm. So my question is, when you see this picture of my Asian friend dressed as Bob Ross with her Afro wig,
okay,
where does that fall on the spectrum?
I don't know.
Can I be totally honest? When you turn that to me as an example of this subject, I thought she was Frederick Douglass.
That's funny. That's funny.
He's alive. He's alive.
He's alive to me, damn it.
That's funny.
It was just one of those things. I saw it on my Facebook feed, and I was
So,
like,
I don't know.
There's Afro wig.
Oh, are you saying because she's dressed as a Jewish guy with a fro, like, and she's Asian? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I read a thing, there was a list of, there was a thing on social media where they were listing things not to do on Halloween. Okay. And all of them seemed reasonable to me except one. They were all, don't dress up as a race or an ethnicity. Don't turn someone's culture into a costume. Don't wear headdresses. Don't, all that stuff. But then there was one that said, gender identity is not a costume. Don't dress trans if you're not trans.
Oh, that's hard.
Which I'm like, does that mean a man can't dress as a woman and vice versa? Does that mean I'm not a big Halloween guy, but I love John Waters and Divine. What if I wanted to be Divine for Halloween? He was a cis man who... he was an actual cross-dresser.
Yeah.
A lot of people refer to trans people as cross-dressers, which is not accurate.
Yeah.
But he was an actual cross-dresser.
Right.
And does
cool.
that mean, am I pretending to be divine? Well, yes, I am, because it's Halloween. You're kind of pretending, but the whole point beyond the costume is that I know that's not my identity, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Does that...
Well, I immediately thought, because one of my costumes, that's right, I do multiple costumes every Halloween, is Agent Pena from Narcos.
Okay.
Right? And he's a dude, and I got a little mustache and a leather jacket and some aviators. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that when you said it. I'm like, is that going to offend someone?
Well, here's the thing about that. Here's the thing. We got to live our lives. We're going to offend people. We don't always intend to offend people. If I do something and I find out it offends someone, then, I can work through that and, find out what the thing is, how it's offensive, and I can move my position. The thing about Halloween costumes is it's a choice. We can choose to be whatever we want to be, and we can, talk through it. And sometimes we don't know that we're offending someone.
Well,
and when we're offending someone, we might not be offending everyone.
Yeah.
So there's all of that that just has to be negotiated.
I cannot stop thinking about this moment from college. And I'm like old-ish. And so I was there down in the streets in like Western New York. And this white girl was dressed as Serena Williams. And she had cornrow braids, a tennis outfit, a tennis racket, and blackface.
Oh, see, I don't like the blackface.
Well, who likes it?
You had me right until...
And so I said to her...
blackface.
I looked at her and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, okay? I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Mm-hmm. And then she was like, it's Halloween. And I was like, girl, and I was drunk. I was like 21. And I feel like, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the language for it. But sure. I remember seeing that, and I see it like it's clear as day. And I remember being like, well, you shouldn't like put on blackface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was the one thing we all agreed on. Maybe not. But I don't know. I'm sort of...
Didn't you see that girl did Orange is the New Black? That was like 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah. And she was like a celebrity, right?
Yeah. I don't even remember what celebrity... Well, her career probably over now.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, so I have a little bit of... So I agree with everything that you said, Greg, about... sometimes you're going to offend people and you got to work through it and people have different feelings. But I also sort of have like a devil's advocacy sort of response to that, which is that isn't that ultimately what everybody says when they reach the limit of their what they're willing to do. So I mean that to me is identical to every white person I ever heard growing up who was just like, everybody's offended by something. Right. What are you going to do? I can't sit around thinking about this. And I think about this all the time. I mean, for sure, clearly, gender is the new frontier. Like, that's where we're at right now with, like, new stuff. I can say, I grew up in the politically correct 80s and 90s. I was schooled in, racial equality and everything. And that doesn't mean that that was... transmitted perfectly, but it was like a cultural norm, right? Gender has been probably the only area in my life where I've felt myself really crossing, where there was something that I was like, the first time I met a trans person, I was transphobic. Not even in an angry, not in a, not that I felt bigoted, but deep in my heart, I just kind of felt, oh, that person's not right. There's something up there. Like, that's too bad that they're, that they have this mental illness or whatever it is. Like that's what my reaction was. And it took being friends with trans people and seeing how completely boring and normal they are in every way that like you break down the barrier. And so that's the same thing as somebody 30 years older than me who had to cross some of these racial barriers at some point in their life. And so I always ask myself, if I ever have a response to something where I'm like, I don't agree with that. That's going too far. That's too PC or whatever. I have to stop myself and be like, have I just bumped up against the limit of my understanding on this? Or
That's a good point.
But then you never know what to do because then you can never do anything.
Right.
You can't internalize every piece of criticism you hear in the world and try to universalize it. But like, so I don't know. That was my response when I heard you say that because I thought, God, this sounds so much like something my dad would have said about making a racist
that's the same,
joke,
and that's one of the same kind of things we have to work through, because we all draw our lines differently. Because as you are talking, I'm reminded. Oh, we've already talked about some of this. Blackface was one. You said blackface, and Rebekah and I are like, yeah, no, no. Right. And you said you thought everybody agreed. Right. The thing is, not everybody agrees. And one of my things also is the N-word. I have trouble with. I don't have trouble with white folks using the word per se, especially if I know them in a certain way. But usually that's a deal breaker for me. And I especially get annoyed when people are trying to, even if they try to slip it in like, well, I'm just saying this lyric from the rap song. I'm like, yeah, no, no. So I have lines that I draw that are sort of non-negotiable, but still, we still have to have those conversations with other people, I don't think there's a one right way. And I can just tell you, as I'm thinking about things, I will respond differently to all the things we talk about, depending on the context and the circumstance and who's involved. I don't have one way. Sometimes a Disney character will be offensive to me. I can't think of one in the moment, but but it could happen.
Well, sometimes the character itself is offensive. Certainly there's been Pocahontas, I think, is a pretty offensive movie. If you watch it with any any actual knowledge of the history. It's pretty hard to watch what you know is historically the story of like a 12-year-old native girl and an adult European showing up to exploit and destroy her land, and they turn it into a fucking romance musical.
The color.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. If someone dressed up as, Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings.
Don't get me started.
No. But they loved each other. No. I know. Yeah.
Okay, that old rapey. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Am I on air?
You are on air.
You can say rapey.
I can say rapey.
You can say the R word.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the R word. Thomas Jefferson was a rapist. Okay, he was. You can't be having slaves and having sex with them and it's not rape. Come on now. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no such thing as we know this. This is another thing that's like decided law. Every court in the world that's ever dealt with sexual harassment in the workplace or in schools or anything, if there's a power imbalance, then there's no such thing as consent.
And the three of us agree on that. Right. As we also know, a lot of people don't agree. And we probably can't say on air. But
someone I may or may not know or may or may not be related to talked to me about how it was a love story and how just that the relationship between slave and master was not cut and dried. And I think we know that, but I think we can't just, come on. I don't have words for it. Help me somebody.
It's possible for both to be true, I think, isn't it? Isn't it possible that, and we have no historical basis for knowing anything, but it's entirely possible that Sally Hemings did love Thomas Jefferson. He's still a rapist. Like, it's still, people can have complicated feelings.
She was still his wife's half-sister, which is also creepy as fuck. I'm sorry, but come on now.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. She was Thomas Jefferson's wife's half-sister because of the old rapey from the from the mom of Thomas Jefferson's wife, or the dad, sorry. Yeah. So.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. It's called Black History.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a book, James.
I know Black History. I didn't know that either.
Last I checked, it was October.
All right.
So.
Dang. I better double check that fact, by the way. But I'm pretty confident on that. So stand by while I check that.
But I remember when Bo Derek wore cornrows. And it was like, come on. How you going to be wearing cornrows? Then all the white girls started wearing cornrows. And it was like, come on, kind of thing. Now, I don't have, now that I'm older, I think differently about that. When I'm not offended by it. But when it first happened, it was like, I felt like it was, and I didn't have the word cultural appropriation then, but I felt like, these are people who were playing, because then it was acting like as if Bo Derek invented cornrows.
Right. Now that's interesting to me, because Bo Derek, so I'm young enough that, so the Bo Derek scene in 10, for anybody, for any youngsters listening, if you just Google Bo Derek, I'm positive that scene will be like the first thing that pops up. And it's her coming up out of the water at the beach with the cornrows. And it's like an iconic scene. It's like Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate with the leg. And it's like an iconic, sexy moment from like movies in that time. But I only ever grew up with a white perspective on it, which was just that Bo Derek was hot. I never knew that there was any. Now, obviously, it seems obvious, but at that time, black people upset about cultural appropriation did not get column inches.
Right.
So, there's no. That's something completely outside my consciousness. I don't know that that's a conversation that took place. Was that something that there was a reaction to?
So there was a reaction, not a lot of conversation. So I will say, because we, so this is good. I'm glad you asked that question, because even today, we don't have conversations, which is part of why we're doing this podcast and having conversations. But 30 years ago and 40 years ago, we really didn't have these conversations. Anything that was a little bit tense, that was a silencing thing. So what would happen is the African American kids would get together and talk about it and laugh about it and joke about it. And process the whole thing. But we did not do that. And we had white friends, but that's not a conversation that we would be prepared to have. People were not talking about. That's the way we dealt with race back then.
We were having the conversation internally. Yeah.
We were having it internally, right? But the way we dealt with race was not to talk about race. And this would be for another show, but most starkly was when Roots came on TV. I was in 10th grade. That was some hard stuff because black kids, you watch it, and we would come to school just looking for a Snicker or anything. We were proud, but we were prepared to fight. Because part of the movie, for the first time on television, in Africa, they had African women with bare breasts and stuff on, and boys in 10th grade, we're like, ooh, that's kind of cool. But that across race, no, we were not going to be having that. You talk in your locker room, we'll talk in our locker room, but but that was back then. And my point being that we really didn't talk about stuff then. And I think that's part of the challenges that we're having now is that we don't get together and talk like we're talking now. And I think we just need to do more of that. And we won't always have the answer to any particular issue because I
literally have no answers at all.
Well, but that's the hard thing. There's a lot of pressure to have an answer. There's I don't know if it's changed. I don't know if it's an internet culture thing, but it's very hard to have a conversation. You're not, what do I want to say? You're expected to have a fully formed point of view at the moment you comment. You're not really permitted, and it's not a race thing, it's a everything thing. You're not permitted to wade into a conversation and just be like, well, what's this all about? Like you need to you better show up knowing your position and stake it out, and you better double down on it if someone comes back. Because if you show a moment of weakness, you will get crushed in the sort of the culture of conversation here.
Yeah.
And people enjoy, that's something, the whatever word you want to use, progressives, liberals, the left, whoever, self-proclaimed woke folks, whatever, are terrible at. They love to just tell somebody who walks into the room like, oh, you're one of them, you're an asshole, we're not interested, and shut that person down. And sometimes it makes sense since we have literal Nazis running around. But it's also I think it's tricky. I think it's hard to have conversations generally about almost everything right now.
Yeah, I agree.
You really have to have your think piece with your argument and your position. There's no just, meditation on a subject.
Right.
It's just not a thing.
But do you think it should be a thing?
Sure.
I think, because that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, well, let's just talk about it because I don't know, but I want to know. And then I'm that person that as soon as someone says some shit on my page and I think is racist, I'm like, forget it.
Sure.
I'm like, you know what? I can't even argue. And you've seen me do it a million times, online, Dr. Diggs, because I'm like, help me somebody, because I just can't do it. That's why I like that white nonsense roundup. Shout out to white nonsense roundup.
But I wish we would take your approach more, understanding that we don't know, because the other feature that you're talking about, James, is you stake out your position, but everybody acts like they actually know or they're actually the expert, and a lot of times they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
That's everybody. I always make that, I always make that joke about when Harambe happened, however you pronounce it, Harambe.
Don't you dare mispronounce a gorilla's name on my show, James.
Quite to the point. When that happened, all of a sudden everybody I knew was a primatologist. It's like, I didn't know I knew so many gorilla experts. All of a sudden everybody knows about gorilla behavior. They know when a gorilla does or doesn't need to be put down. They know what gorillas do. I'm like, Jesus, I've been surrounded by zoologists for years and I had like no idea. And it's like, that's the thing. Everybody, you wait for one fact to trickle in. You know, that was like last week or 2 weeks ago, everybody on the left was dumping all over Trump for, he didn't stand for the, when they do the melody on the trumpet on a military base and everybody salutes the flag. And yeah, sure, he's the commander-in-chief. He should know it. My feeling is...
He didn't know.
I have so much to criticize Donald Trump about.
Yeah.
And for me to jump on something that I didn't know about 2 minutes ago is kind of just petty and intellectually dishonest.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. They hear... if they hear like a trickle of information and it backs up something they believe, they're happy to just own it and just treat it as their data and treat it as something that
it is a fact that Sally Hemings was
perfect.
Thomas Jefferson's wife's half-sister.
Wow. So
she came to the marriage.
So she's his half-sister-in-law.
No. What?
Must be.
His wife's
She's
half-sister.
his wife's half-sister.
So that's his half-sister-in-law, yeah.
Damn.
So that
sounds worse when you say it that way. You made it sound like a third cousin or something. No,
it does sound pretty bad. It does sound bad. Well, anyway, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's a fact, and I repeated it, and I was pretty sure it was right, but I did double check it because I am a librarian.
I appreciate the fact check. And actually, this is my failure as a producer. I should have been Googling that. You should not have been Googling Sally Hemings during
I feel like I should have just known that I was right in the moment, but I got nervous.
You knew you were right.
I did. That's why I said it. But
should have just snuck it in. Nobody's fact checking this deep in. Nobody's looking.
Maybe she did just.
They have already decided if they want to listen to you or not. This decision has already been made.
That's funny.
I don't think it's going well.
That's funny.
All right. Well, do you want to try to do one question?
Yeah, we could do questions.
Yeah. Let's do one. We're gonna try to get to at least one.
Why don't you give some background on where these questions come from?
So Dr. Diggs and I did
while I try to figure
a presentation.
That's good.
About a program that we kind of had developed together called Am I Racist? Just a kind of like a module to be able to talk about race and have a conversation about it. And we have people write down questions that maybe they don't want to say out loud, or maybe they're shy, maybe they're embarrassed. And so that way we kind of want it to be anonymous so that James just dropped all the questions.
I just dropped every single thing on the floor.
But just to kind of be able to maybe answer some of those questions in a segment that we like to call You So Ignorant. No, just kidding. Should the name of the segment be Am I Racist?
Oh.
I don't know, but the questions aren't necessily Am I Racist?
It's just I don't know what the segment is going to be called, but it's going to be.
Keep killing time. Explain what you're. Explain what.
So the reason behind being able to ask these questions is because, listen, we know white people inadvertently sometimes will say something and then cry about it later, right? Because they feel like, oh, that was racist, or I felt bad, or I didn't know. And so we want to be able to provide a little bit of a space for you to ask questions to people of color. And we'll be able to try to answer it, as best we can. But this is also for that white person that does have those, those people of color friends. And we're going to spare those friends this conversation. We're going to try to answer that question for them.
I think this is a very good question for that.
Okay. Let's
in particular, because I was wondering, I was like, well, some of these are really complicated. And some of these are very, first day of a cultural studies class freshman year.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't go to cultural studies class.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, and I think this is a very commonly asked question. So if racism, and that's in quotes, if racism against whites does not exist because that a power structure is necessary in order for racism to be part of the equation, what do you call discrimination or negative treatment of white people by people of color?
Reparations.
No.
The end. Thank you for tuning into the Reparations podcast.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Whew.
That is a very poor deal. If that's the reparations,
you're right. I gotta get more than that.
Yeah, that's not
Okay. Well, I think that I know what Dr. Diggs is going to call it, and I think I will agree with him on it, and I'll see if I'm right. I think that is called bigotry or prejudice.
That's right.
And why is that, Dr. Diggs?
It is the power. It is the power dynamic. All of us can be prejudiced, and prejudice is actually kind of a normal, natural condition. I mean, prejudice to me is about, once you have some knowledge and experience and so forth, when you come across new situations, you look at it from the lens of your background, and you may prejudge new situations or people and things based on your experience. So I think we all do that. That has a racial application. So African Americans, not knowing Native Americans, can make a prejudgment about who they are and what they are about and what they do based on whatever our background or experience what that is. So we can be prejudiced. Bigotry is a little more powerful. It's kind of the same thing, but it's really an intolerance of ways of being or groups of people or whatever that are not part of what you tolerate or approve of. And so all of us can be bigoted towards one another, and we are. And within prejudice, within bigotry, people of color have and do discriminate against other people. But this thing of racism is a little stronger than that. It's institutional. Our society is built upon racism, and it's really the backup of the power structure that makes it different for those who are from subordinated groups, races, cultures, abilities, because we can treat each other badly, but our treating each other badly is usually not supported by the institutions of the country. So the formula that we normally say is that racism is prejudice plus power. And that's what racism is. And it's just a little bit different. So it doesn't mean that people of color can't treat white people poorly or discriminate against them or be hateful or mean. We can do that, and that does happen. But it's not quite the same as racism.
Mic drop. Damn,
that's it. Nothing to add. Nothing to add to that.
They had that study that came out. Did you guys see that at all? NPR was doing a study and said 55% of white people felt like there is discrimination against white people. And by that argument, you could say that yes, then they are discriminated against. But I'm not really buying that. I'm sorry. I don't feel like because of affirmative action or something that is discriminating against white people. And that's like their argument, where people say, well, now if you look at it, like you got two candidates and then the black feller gets it every time.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry to that accent, you guys. Sorry if anyone's
This is bad. So we've lost
Rhode Island.
We've lost the Arkansas, Arkansas, and now just the whole South.
Sorry.
But no, that's a good. I had an experience. So I work in higher ed, and I had a situation. You guys hear that? You hear the
wine.
Wine pouring. You hear the screw top on the jug coming off. We're just passing the jug around. You can't see it. We got a big brown jug, like XXX, that we're just passing around. Yes, please. Thank you. I work in higher ed, and there was so I saw a Twitter thread recently posted. I don't remember the name, but one of those sort of like, there are a lot of people on Twitter who are now pretty much just famous for being good at Twitter. She's not like a journalist as far as I know or anything. She's just she's an African American woman on Twitter who makes a lot of good tweets and has a ton of followers. And she had posted a thread about how, in her experience, white people believe that that black people go to college for free. that black people don't pay to go to the doctor. The genuine belief is that the only people in America who pay for anything are white people.
Wow.
In a very, and I mean that in a very literal way. I mean, they literally believe this.
Yeah.
And I encountered that at my job where I do financial aid stuff for college students. And I had a guy who was like a late 20s white guy on the phone with me. And I asked him if he was planning to apply for financial aid. And he indicated that he was white. So there was no point.
I've heard that a lot.
That, I'm his exact words were, I'm white and middle class, so I know that I wouldn't get anything. Which, aside from the fact that it's completely untrue, everybody who applies for financial aid qualifies for something. Now, to be fair, in a lot of cases, that's just like subsidized loans, so people don't think of that as aid. It's true that if you're above a certain income threshold, you're not going to get any free grants. It's true that a larger proportion of free grants go to people of color. But the notion that white people are not out here getting Pell Grants is just nuts.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, but that's an honest belief. And it wasn't said in anything I perceived as an angry tone. It wasn't said in a conspiratorial tone, like he knew, like we were two white guys talking, And again, we were on the phone. Well, because I've heard that tone a lot in my life. And when you're hearing that tone. But it wasn't anything like that. It was stated as a plain fact. Oh, I'm white. Why would I apply for financial aid? That was basically the perspective. And so that really is the point of view that people come from when they believe they're discriminated against, is they really literally believe that the only people paying full price for anything are them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we need to talk more.
Yeah.
That's why we need to talk more.
It is not true. It is not true.
It isn't.
I received Pell Grants. I mean, yeah.
And I did not.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of...
and this is where I drop in fancy. See, I'm learning with you. But I can't afford to play fancy.
But I think...
Damn it!
I'll play something that sounds a little like it.
But I think that's the root of a lot of our distress and discomfort, is that we grow up believing things about others and we just accept them as if it's true. And it just really, a lot of things that we believe just really aren't even close to being true. And people, it's like the model minority thing. People believe that, Asians are just smart and they get into any college they want to and this, that, and the other. But it actually doesn't quite happen that way. It happens a lot, right? But it's a stereotype. That's not true. And that's the other weird thing about America is, where do we get? I mean, we just take a lot of things for granted, and you almost have to think about, well, where did I learn that? Why do I believe that? I mean, I grew up being homophobic, like hatefully homophobic, until I finally thought about it. And that wasn't until college. But then when I thought about it, because I was trying to get my argument together, because I was prepared to argue with someone about homosexuality. But then when I thought about it, I'm like, well, what is my problem with homosexuality? And then I'm like, I don't think I have a problem with homosexuality. But I had never even taken the time to think about it. It's just, that's the way it was. It's just, that's the way it was, I was socialized a certain way as an athlete that, there's things you're supposed to think and do. But I think there are a lot of things that are that way, where sometimes we just think stuff without ever doing any kind of reflection or examination, or even bothering to take the time to find out who people are and what they're about and what they're doing. And it's so fascinating when you take the time. It's like, that's all right. So that's why I like what we're doing, because I think sometimes we just have to talk.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to be doing.
That's what we're going to be doing here on this show.
And you're going to Shut up and listen.
No, no. Listen.
No,
I can't wait to. I can't wait to hear.
No, that's our tagline, isn't it? Shut up.
Shut up
when
while
I'm
we
talking.
talk.
Right.
Shut up. Yeah, I wrote it down.
So the best tagline is the one that the person who made it up cannot remember 2 hours.
That's funny. After wine.
That's how you know that you're really. That's how you know you have a winner.
It's shut up while we talk. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not that good. I don't know.
I like that.
Off Color is a presentation of Tan Tigress Productions, hosted by me, Rebekah Henderson, produced by White James, aka James Meekum. Follow us on Twitter at Off Color Pod, on Facebook at Off Color Podcast, and subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.